me 5 minutes in a locked room with this demon,
I have
would you do that?
That is not
Yes
how
or
our...
no?
No, sir, I can't.
Would you give me 1 minute?
You know that I can't do that. That's not how our legal system...
It's just our families taking my child.
This is Larry Nassar,
The word Nassar will permanently be associated with child sexual abuse.
who was facing multiple sexual abuse charges in Michigan. Nassar, who served as the team doctor for USA Gymnastics, was accused of sexually assaulting hundreds of gymnasts under the guise of medical treatment, many of whom were Olympians. Police said Nassar manipulated the athletes into believing that he was their trusted friend and advisor.
You have to protect your athletes. You have to let them know that we care. You have to not let them know, but let them feel it. Let them understand it. Let them breathe it.
Nassar was brought in for questioning, where he claimed that he was in fact the victim.
That's my self-torture, I guess you could say. That. Yes, she was victimized. Yes, I was victimized to myself.
Instead, Nassar blamed the young women he victimized, saying they should have said something sooner.
I don't get it. Why didn't she say something if she was feeling violated in any way, shape, and form? There was no communication.
Okay.
Nassar also defended his medical procedures.
If you don't have patient confidence and patient trust, you would have been having my here how many times?
Right.
Okay, especially when I'm doing this on 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, okay, with their parents there. But I'm obviously doing a doggone good job explaining things, okay, because what?
However, authorities botched up the investigation, and Nassar was initially released. But as more and more victims came forward, Nassar once again faced the music.
Has there been another complaint? I'm just so confused right now.
The reason I'm asking is that we did have another complaint.
Really?
Yeah. And it's a patient from a while ago. Do you ever get aroused during these exams?
I shouldn't be getting an erection during an exam.
This is why I'm talking to you about this, because this young girl and her mother both observed this on more than one occasion during treatment.
Nassar again tried to defend his actions and played the victim card. But this time, his game was up.
If there was arousal, it's. I mean, like it would be because of whatever. I don't know, but I'm not trying to.
Whatever. I don't know.
Well.
I don't know.
When you're a guy, sometimes you get an erection. It's like blindsiding someone. You know what I mean? It's like you're doing this and you're doing it for good to help someone, and they're giving you the positive feedback that you're helping them. How do I know I'm hurting them?
Eventually, Nassar pleaded guilty to multiple charges of criminal sexual conduct. At his sentencing, more than 150 victims gave powerful and emotional testimonies.
The word Nassar will permanently be associated with child sexual abuse.
What kind of a person has the audacity to sexually assault a child in front of their mother?
I will be out in the real world, thriving, empowering, and standing by others while you rot in a prison cell the rest of your life.
A victim described how Nassar destroyed her family.
You used my body for 6 years for your own sexual gratification. That is unforgivable. You convinced my parents that I was a liar. My father and I did our best to patch up our tattered relationship before he committed suicide in 2016.
The mother of one of the victims also spoke on behalf of her now deceased daughter.
And I had been in the room with her during her examination, as usual. And I said, "Are you ready to go to lunch?" And she's like, "No, Mom, I just want to go home." And I said, "What's wrong? Are you in pain?" And she said, "Mom, I just want to go home." And I said, "Okay." So we got in the car and I said, and she started bawling. And I said, "Chelsea, tell me what's wrong." And she said, "Mom," and they weren't gloved. And I said, "Chelsea, I was right there in the room." And she goes, "You couldn't see what was going on, Mom." And she said, "He hurt me." In 2009, she took her own life because she couldn't deal with the pain anymore.
However, nobody could have imagined what was to follow when the father of a victim asked the judge to address Nassar directly.
I would ask you to, as part of this sentencing, to grant me 5 minutes in a locked room with this demon. Would you do that?
That is not how
Yes or
our...
no?
No, sir, I can't.
Would you give me 1 minute?
You know that I can't do that.
When denied, he decided to take matters into his own hands.
Well, I'm going to have to get Stay out. want that stuff behind your back. I know. Give me 1 minute with that.
The grieving father was arrested and taken away by court officers. After the dust settled, Judge Rosemarie Aquilina had some harsh words for the defendant.
Because you are guilty, aren't you? Are you guilty, sir?
I said my plea, exactly.
As much as it was my honor and privilege to hear the sister survivors, it is my honor and privilege to sentence you. Because, sir, you do not deserve to walk outside of a prison ever again. You have done nothing to control those urges, and anywhere you walk, destruction will occur. I find that you don't get it, that you're a danger. You remain a danger. I am a judge who believes in life and rehabilitation when rehabilitation is possible. I don't find that's possible with you. Your decision to assault was precise, calculated, manipulative, devious, despicable.
Eventually, it was time for Nassar to learn his fate.
I'm giving you 175 years, which is 2,100 months. I just signed your death warrant.
I'm so horribly sorry that this was like a match that turned into a forest fire out of control. And I pray the rosary every day for forgiveness for I want them to heal. I want this community to heal. I have no animosity towards anyone. I just want healing. It's time.
You used that position of trust that you had in the most vile way to abuse children. I agree that now is a time of healing, but it may take them a lifetime of healing while you spend your lifetime behind bars.
Ultimately, the disgraced doctor was sentenced to 175 years in prison. While Larry Nassar's case is one of the worst sexual assault scandals in the history of sports, what happens when you taunt a grieving father in court? Like in the case of Michael Madison, who's on trial for multiple murders in Ohio. According to reports, Madison kidnapped and killed 3 women in 2013 before dumping their bodies in plastic bags near his home in East Cleveland.
It was a call about a bad smell that led police to this abandoned home and garage. 2 of the bodies were found here. The 3rd victim was found in an overgrown field about 100 yards away.
Police also found decomposed human remains at his apartment.
There was evidence of decomposition fluid, several parts of the apartment building. There were maggots that were attached to the decomposition fluid.
Madison was arrested and charged with 3 counts of aggravated murder. If convicted, he could be facing the death penalty. At his trial, the defense claimed the killings were spontaneous and in the heat of the moment.
That each one of these individuals was killed with a sudden eruption of violence, not a considered course of action as required by prior calculation and design. He made no effort to bury these bodies and really conceal them, despite the fact that they're in fairly obvious areas.
But the prosecution argued that Madison's actions were calculative and premeditated.
He killed them in the same way, at the same place, and in a short time frame. Then he disposed of their bodies. To avoid detection from his crimes, he tied 2 of the victims up with duct tape, placing their legs on each side of their head and bending the body in half.
Eventually, Madison was found guilty of all charges as the victims' family members cried tears of joy.
Number 9.
Yes.
Number 10.
Yes.
We therefore unanimously find that the sentence of death should be imposed upon the defendant, Michael Madison.
At his sentencing, Van Terry, a victim's father, addressed his daughter's killer.
Right now, I guess we're supposed to, in our hearts, forgive this crime. It's touched our families, taking my child.
He looked straight at Madison, who grinned at him off camera. This is when Terry exploded. Fortunately, Terry was quickly apprehended and taken out of the courtroom. He did not face any additional charges. A short while later, Judge Nancy McDonnell addressed the court.
I am struck by the sheer
inhumanity of what one human being could do to not one, but 3 human beings.
She called the murders an act of sheer inhumanity.
It is incomprehensible. You cajoled, lured, and deceived Shatisha Shealy, Angela Deskins, and Sherelda Terry to your apartment for your depraved purposes.
Finally, it was time for the serial killer to learn his sentence.
Upon consideration of the relevant evidence, the testimony exhibits admitted in mitigation, it is a judgment of this court that the aggravated circumstances of course of conduct, felony murder, kidnapping, felony murder, rape, of which the defendant was convicted, outweigh the mitigating factors by proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Accordingly, the sentence of death is imposed upon the defendant, Michael Madison, on counts 1, 4, and 7.
Ultimately, Madison received the death penalty. He will live on Ohio's death row. While Michael Madison felt the full wrath of his victim's father, how does it compare to being attacked by another prisoner? Like in the case of Christopher Elwell, who's facing child molestation charges in New Hampshire. According to reports, 28-year-old Elwell sexually assaulted a 4-year-old at his Dover apartment while the child was having a sleepover with his 9-year-old daughter. Elwell was arrested and charged with aggravated felonious sexual assault. The prosecution said Elwell showed the minor several sexually implicit videos.
They described him showing them videos of sexual acts similar to the ones that she had done.
After initially denying the allegations, Elwell eventually pleaded guilty. He also pled guilty for failing to register as a sex offender, having been previously convicted on a different charge.
The defendant was required to register as a sex offender and had been living at 12 Mineral Park Drive off and on, but more than 5 times a month, and had not changed his registration with the Somersworth Police Department.
After learning his fate, Elwell was sat down with another prisoner, Josiah Davies, who was awaiting his hearing. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, Davies started headbutting Elwell repeatedly. Elwell seemed impassive as court deputies quickly apprehended Davis. He was later charged with felony assault. As for Elwell, he was ultimately sentenced to 7.5 to 15 years in prison. While some may say Christopher Elwell received justice from an unexpected source, what happens when the person to deliver the justice is your cellmate? Like in the case of Stephen Sanderson, who's facing murder charges in Michigan.
The reason I killed him was because he was a child.
Interview with prisoner Sanderson, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and explain to me basically what you told the staff when you came out of the cell.
According to reports, Sanderson, who was already serving life without parole in state prison for a 1991 murder case, attacked and killed 67-year-old Ted Dyer in their cell. Later, Sanderson gave a chilling confession to the police.
Why don't you just go ahead and tell us what happened?
All right, I guess he decided to clear his conscience or something, but, he told me what he was in prison for, that he had, was accused of raping an 11-year-old girl, and he got 25 to life for it, and, I told him that's enough, I don't want to hear any more. I first, punched him a couple times, still wouldn't shut up, still kept telling me he wanted to explain that he didn't do it, that he was being set up and all this stuff, and I don't know, I just got mad and then hit him, and then I killed him. When I hit him and knocked him out, and then I took the shoelaces out of his shoes, tied them together, wrapped it around his neck, and killed him.
He eventually pleaded guilty to the murder charge.
How do you wish to plead to the second count of murder in the second victim? Guilty?
Yes, sir.
And doing so freely and voluntarily?
Yes.
Doing so because you are guilty?
Yes, sir.
All right.
In court, Sanderson justified taking the life of his cellmate by giving a specific reason.
The reason I killed him was because he was a child molester.
Back in 2014, Dyer was convicted of sexual criminal conduct for molesting a 9-year-old girl.
All right, well, he was my bunkie, and I had found out that he was in prison for child molestation. Really bad case. So that night he was trying to justify why he did it, and I just told him to be quiet, and he would have to leave in the morning to find a new cell, but he continued to talk about it and try to justify it. So he was a little bit bigger than me, so I got down and I hit him in his face a few times, and when he fell, I wrapped a cord around his neck and I took his life.
As a formality to the guilty plea, Sanderson's lawyer confirmed the basics.
But you did in fact kill him? Oh, sure. And you intended to? Oh, sure, yes.
At his sentencing, Sanderson addressed the public response he received following the murder.
You know, since this all happened, it's kind of been, people think I'm some kind of hero, but I'm actually not. I just, did what I thought was best.
He said Dyer's real judgment was yet to come.
I've been getting these emails saying that, it's not my position to judge anybody. And I want to make it quite clear that I didn't judge him. I know God is the only judge we have. I've just set the appointment up.
Sanderson showed no remorse for his actions and said he would do it again given the chance.
I don't feel bad for what I did. I feel bad for maybe his family or something. But as far as remorse towards him, no.
While Stephen Sanderson believes he did a good deed by killing another person, what happens when brother attacks brother in court? Like in the case of Quinn Bowes, who was charged with the death of his infant in Indiana. According to reports, 23-year-old Bowes is accused of killing his 11-week-old son at their home in Gibson County.
In Gibson County, a plea deal has been reached in the case of a man accused in the death of his son.
Bowes initially told authorities the child had stopped breathing after falling from his bed. However, an investigation revealed that the infant died from blunt force trauma to the head. Bowes eventually pleaded guilty to domestic battery, resulting in death. Then something shocking happened at his sentencing. A heavily shackled Bowes was leaving the courtroom when he was met with a flurry of punches. The attacker was Bowes' brother and the baby's uncle, Jeremiah Hartley. Hartley was immediately arrested. He was given 179 days in jail for contempt and faces further misdemeanor battery charges. As for Bowes, he was ultimately sentenced to 25 years in prison for murdering his son.